Can I bring up the
Right.
energy in my body without sounding too hippy-dippy woo-woo about it? It's, how much thought and energy internally can I put into that? Can I ride him with my seat from the ground, right? Can I direct him with my seat or my core to help influence those changes in those positions? And once I can do that and that all checks out, now this might take a week.
Right.
It might take 10 minutes, right? It might be nothing, okay? And wherever the horse is in there, he's right.
Welcome to Dressage Life with JJ Tate. Do you love dressage? Are you looking to inspire your ride? Do you long to learn secrets of truly great riders? Yes? Then you're in the right place. Join classically trained, internationally competitive dressage rider JJ Tate as she brings inspired conversations, in-depth discussions, and a healthy dose of humor to the world of dressage. Join JJ and her new generation of classical riders in this adventure called Dressage Life. This episode is part 2 of JJ's conversation with Classical Horseman Patrick King. It's an exploration of Patrick's background in horses, his history of learning from the legends of natural horsemanship, the parallels between classical dressage and natural horsemanship, along with the ideas of coherence with horses and acknowledging rider fear to move past it. This interview is in 2 parts, so be sure to go back and listen to episode 12 to get the full experience. And now, here's JJ.
I feel like you are, like, for me, the first person that's ever been able to, like, completely connect those dots of, like, what you're doing on the ground completely then relates to the shape and posture you want when you're actually on it, without just putting it in side reins and making it, which, there's a time and place for that too, but that's also then, like, exercising the body to gain the mind, where what you're doing is really explaining to the horse how to shape himself so that you actually explain it to him, and then you can remind him to do that. So tell me a little bit more about how you do that.
Yeah, and that, that to me goes back to my time with Ray. And can you get to the feet? Can you get the mind influenced so that you can influence the feet? And then it's not just, and Ray was big on this, it's not just moving the feet around. Is how did you get those feet to move around, and how did they move when they, and so then it's, kind of for me, combining that with more the understanding of the biomechanics and the physiology and the ultimate aim of collection, how do we want him to be shaping that up? So it is to me a little bit more taking it a little deeper and a little farther beyond. And yet it all still goes back to, what you see in kind of the natural horsemanship idea of moving the feet and that sort of thing, just to kind of a more, if I might dare to say it, a more sophisticated level. Right. So that the horse is truly understanding, not just move the feet, but engage these parts of your body when you're moving your feet. And I do feel like that makes it so much easier. Can they go around? Can they go around us on a circle? Sure. But how are they going around us on a circle? Can they go around? I joke all the time about my invisible side reins, and I know my friend Warwick Schiller talks about his invisible draw reins, that sort of thing. So it's kind of funny how the parallel comes in there. But the invisible side reins are, can you get the body posturally prepared for the circle that he's on in the first place? And then can you get him receptive in that? Well, if he's receptive and he's postured in the proper way, he's going to be releasing through the top line that he's going to be coming over his back. So do I need to spend the extra money on side reins? No, I don't even need them, Now, of course, there is the time and the place for, developing different muscles and that sort of thing. But, when it comes to just the basic acceptance and understanding, there's so much that we can do without the need for the extra auxiliary stuff,
Right.
Yeah. But so then from there, again, going back to the young horse that we just get in for starting under saddle. So then from there, once I know that I can operate him left and right, his shoulders, his hips, and forward and backward, can I get him to change gaits? And if I can get him to change gaits, how does he change gaits? Is he pretty willing? Do I have to do a lot? Or can I, we started talking whenever I was there about that lunging with intention. Can I bring up the energy in my body without sounding too hippy-dippy woo-woo about it? It's, how much thought and energy internally can I put into that? Can I ride him with my seat from the ground, right? Can I direct him with my seat or my core to help influence those changes in those positions? And once I can do that and that all checks out, now this might take a week. It might take 10 minutes. right? It
Right.
might be nothing, okay? And wherever the horse is in there, he's right, okay? Then I want to see, okay, can we get acceptance of carrying the saddle? If we can get one receptive that we've got all those other pieces already working,
Mm-hmm.
they're usually pretty receptive for whatever you want to introduce to them,
Okay.
depending on how you introduce it, right?
Right.
There's tactfulness that's required, with all of these things. But so then we start with the saddling process, and how well is he accepting that saddling process? Does he flinch? And so now we're thinking again into those postural muscles. What's
Yeah.
happening? Is he starting to hold his breath when we put the saddle on? Is he flinching a little but not moving? Or is he
Yeah.
completely running away? Right? All of those would be things telling me that I need to take a step back and reevaluate how open is he, and am I presenting
Mm-hmm.
it in a way that's helping him to be confident through the process. And that
Mm-hmm.
was something where Ray used to tell us all the time, you can move quickly, but that doesn't mean that you're rushing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see that, one way of relating that is when you see people cinch up or girth up the horse for the first time. You take too long in doing that, and it's going to end up under his belly, and you're going to wish somebody else would have done it for you. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But if you do that too fast, you get it too tight, and he feels like he's being cut in half, right? And so
Yeah.
then the explosion
Yeah.
happens. So it's where's the middle ground in there? Can you present that to him in a way that you're smooth and ready, kind of rolling that latigo up or snugging those billets up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that he's okay with it. Now, when he first starts to move, they may do some bucking around, some moving around,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
If they were born without a mane and tail and you strapped one on them, it would probably bother them a little bit the first time too. But now I've learned also that there's ways that we can move them around in between and influence the body and get
Yeah.
them more relaxed and
Breathing.
releasing.
Yeah.
Breathing, so that those are less of an issue. Does it mean it won't ever happen? No, of course not. Because it's a horse's nature, right?
Right.
And as soon as you try to argue with their nature, you're going to lose because Mother Nature always wins.
Yeah.
It's if we can get Mother Nature on our side, that's what we're really
Yeah.
aiming for. And so then, really, it's just the process of going through that, and how soon, if he's pretty okay about the saddling process, then I might say, okay, can I be in the saddle? Now, I like to if I'm starting one under saddle the first time, I like to do a lot of jumping up, jumping on, jumping
Yeah.
over bareback first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really big on that because I'm a chicken shit and I have commitment issues and I don't want to be stuck in a stirrup if they decide they don't want me up there. Okay. So I do a lot with that. Okay. And so that's ground mounting. That's mounting from the mounting block, just jumping up, jumping around, getting them okay, kind of
Yeah.
bellying over, that sort of thing. And like everything else, it's just a graduated process.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's, can we move forward? Can we flow forward without restriction? And then we break that down. So the first thing I want to do is, can you be confident carrying me?
Yeah.
Not even with me directing you. Can you be confident carrying me? So just like
Mm-hmm.
when we were with Ray and there was a group of a little small herd of horses flowing around, when I first start one under saddle, I want to check out, can I bend your nose? Can I move a hind foot if I need to? So we talk about the disengaging the hind quarters, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
really big on
Mm-hmm.
telling people, knock that stuff off, knock it off, quit it, don't do it. Make sure you can. Okay.
Right.
Make
Right.
sure you
Right.
can, but don't overdo it. Don't overuse
Yeah.
it. So the first time under saddle, I want to make sure that I can do that. And then I might never have to ask for it again from there, because if he goes
Yeah.
forward, I'm going to flow with it. If he needs
Right.
to go faster, I'm going to go faster with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so long as you can ride as fast as he can run, he's not going to run away with you, right? He's just going to. But if, and this is where I get really picky too, on the mind, if they get to a point where they're escalating emotionally, that's where we need to find a way to bring that back down and help them. That might be something as little as reaching up and petting them on the neck. It
Mm-hmm.
might be something as big as disengaging the hind quarters, and it can be anything in between. It's just, can I get
Mm-hmm.
that mind back to bring that relaxation? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so again, my aim is, can we, in that first ride, walk, chalk, canter, and rein back in the first ride?
Yep.
Does it mean it happens every time? No. And the horse always holds the calendar, so there's never a rush. But if I were
Right.
having my ideal starting that young horse under saddle, that's what it would look like. And we'd probably work the gait and go out for a little trail ride. if they're comfortable and okay with that. And the whole process would probably only be 30 or 45 minutes from start to finish.
Right,
It's not going to be a long drawn out process. There's not going to be sweating or swearing or, anything like that. It's within normal sweating from work. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it shouldn't be all of this emotional sweat that we see happening from a lot of horses, where their heart and their brains are leaking out of their body.
Yes.
That's no good.
That's sad to see sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about your cavesson that you use, because I think that's also very interesting. And I know you do also a lot of interesting flexions of you really explain it to the horse how to soften to the bit and soften to this cavesson. And tell me what role that has in your program.
That has become to me kind of the holy grail, really, in all of it. I was very fortunate many years ago to meet a man named Mark Russell, who became right away a good friend. And he really opened my eyes to seeing even deeper into the internal side of the horses. And he's the one really that got me thinking about, or got me understanding more the importance of working with those intrinsic muscles, the postural muscles, right? The balancing muscles. And that's where I've started taking this on with the groundwork, digging deep into those pieces. But that, I think one of the best ways I've come to describe it is that I think of the horse's body, specifically the spine in this case. I think of the spine as being like a garden hose. Anywhere there's a kink in the garden hose, the water's not going to flow through. Okay. And so when we're talking about flexions, we start from the nose and eventually work our way all the way back to the tail. And I just want to see, is your pole, can we unlock your pole laterally? Okay. Can we and there's very little flexion in the pole laterally anyway, but can we get that to start the process? Because that's really the doorway to the rest of the spine. Okay. If that's braced, the whole body's going to be protective. Okay. Yeah. And it goes both ways, right? Like it's 6 on one side, half dozen on the other. There can be sticky spots and braces in the body that cause the pole to brace out of protectiveness. Okay. And it can also go the other way around. The pole can be protective and cause restrictions in the rest of the body. Right. So I just want to check always, through that process, where might you be stuck? Where might you be locked and blocked? And can we release that? Can we, through the bit, induce relaxation through the whole body, right? Rather than
hallelujah.
Right, exactly. Rather than inducing a brace. And a lot of our horses, they do learn how to brace, of course. Yes. It's a natural protectiveness, right? And to an extent, every horse will learn to brace in some form or fashion. It's just within this, can we help to alleviate all of that through the process of educating the horse? In a perfect world, we would keep them completely free from that, but we don't live in that.
Well, and that's always that, like, the dressage rider's dream is to have that horse totally through, and that power of the hind leg permeating through his whole entire body, through that bit, back into the rider, back into the hind legs, and that flow of energy unconstrained by the foreign weight and influence of the rider is like those moments when the clouds part and the sunbeam comes down and the angels hit the high C, and it's like,
absolutely, wave to baby Jesus. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like exactly what you're talking about, and what you go for is that same. It's like exactly the same thing of like how to help that horse find his way out of that brace, and that we want to help show him that there's no need for that, even though of course it's going to show up, even if you are an amazing rider and perfectly balanced and very kind and patient. Like the horse, just to deal with his balance, will find that brace point.
You're still a foreign object up there.
Exactly, kind of throwing him off balance. And I really love that about your work, that it was also with tools on the ground, helping that horse understand like that throughness that we're all sort of seeking.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of that for me can come down to a little bit that blend where we talk about the whole natural horsemanship blending with dressage.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it, what I tend to see, and I'm kind of lumping and generalizing here, and I see you smiling and giggling already. We tend to see in a lot of our, I'm going to say, English disciplines,
Okay.
we tend to see horses that, I'll risk offending people, aren't quite educated on the ground,
Yes.
right? You can't lead the damn thing from the box to the paddock without a chain
Yeah.
over its nose and
Yeah.
without a whatever, right? Yet, when they're riding, they're these beautiful creatures,
Yeah.
they transform into this amazing deal. And then you go to the backyard and you've got these trail horses, these little Western ponies that they are quiet as anything. You could let your 4-year-old kid lead them from the stall to the paddock, and they're just going to be the most forgiving, patient thing on the planet. But you put them under saddle, and you couldn't get collection out of them if your life depended on it, right?
Right.
And so there's a difference in the education there, right?
Yeah.
And so where I feel like I've been really blessed to have a big, broad base in the horsemanship side of things, and now I'm coming to the dressage side of things. So when I'm playing with these horses on the ground, I'm thinking, well, of course you're struggling with this because you can't lead him from the box to the paddock. Like, well, of course there's going to be brace in the body. Of course there's going to be all these other things, right? Because it's in there. We just didn't realize it to begin with. So when we're working with them from the ground, I'm always feeling, do I want to ride that? Right? If he's dragging me like I'm a sled, right? Do I want to ride that? Well, hell no. We see enough people ride that, right? And I don't want to be one of those. And likewise, if I'm dragging him like he's a sled, do I want to ride that? Right? So again, taking this a little bit deeper, if we're working in the cavesson, and I used to do all of my work in a rope halter, to the point where I still don't own any web halters or regular leather halters, just because I didn't never really felt a need for them, so I've always thought, can I get the body to unlock, and can I get these things to work right in the rope halter? Can I get the balance? Can I get all these things working well? Yeah, absolutely, you can. Then my first trip to Portugal, Senor Luis Valença, he was talking about the purpose of the cavesson, because the cavessons are big in Portugal. They're big all over the world, right? But they use them more there than I've seen them anywhere exclusively used, really, in my travels. And that was just my exposure, really. That's nothing else. But he was talking about the story that he gave just made perfect sense. He said, when you give a child a toy train on a string, the string is tied to the front of the first car, and every car is connected behind that. And when he pulls the front of that first car, the rest of the train follows. When you're leading them from the halter, that's like being tied to the back of the first car. Can you get that straight? Yeah, but you're going to be doing a lot of wiggling and a lot of balancing, and you're going to be doing a lot more work to keep it straight, rather than if you just connect the string to the front of the train.
Interesting.
And then you just draw it through. And when he said that, I thought, damn it, now I need a cavesson. Because it made perfect sense. Up until then, it's like you talk about, you've got to hear the explanation that makes the most sense. Right.
That connects it for you in your brain.
Yeah, that connects the dots. And maybe I had heard something similar to that before. Since then, I've noticed people talk about, I think it's Manolo Mendez talks about a string of pearls and that sort of thing. And I think, I'm sure I heard that before at some point, but I wasn't in a place where I was ready to hear it. Right? Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as he said that, I thought, well, damn it, now I've got to start working from a cavesson more and feel this. And as soon as I did, of course he's right. And so I started playing more and more with cavessons, and then I just started feeling lots of different cavessons. I think at one point I owned every cavesson that anybody's ever made, and started putting together the pieces that I really appreciated and really liked, and so then developed my own that's, a solid metal noseband, but shapeable so it fits the horse better, and a wider crown piece to protect the pole and keep pressure off the TMJ, and the bottom strap to keep it out of the eyes, and all that stuff. But the gist of it is, then when I think about working a horse in hand, I was just coaching a student with this earlier today. I said, your arm in hand is an extension of their neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my osteopath friends, I've heard them refer to the horse's skull as being the first vertebrae in the neck. And how mobile is that, right? And so that really got me thinking, well, when we're holding that noseband, your hand is now the first vertebrae in the neck. Right. And how does everything flow beyond that? And then it becomes, because I nerd out about all this stuff. Then it's, well, my spine is a connection of their spine, and how fluid is everything flowing within that, So
and where am I holding my tension? Like, is my wrist tight, or am I like,
absolutely. And that's when we get into those spots of
energy.
Energy. And are you asking too hard? Are you creating a brace in there, just in how you're making your request?
Well, we can just talk about that for a second, because that was one of my biggest takeaways when you were there. And I feel like I'm a really understanding and compassionate classical trainer, and my horses are light in the hand and happy to work for me, and just there's no spur marks, and their mouths are quiet, and there's no white sweat, and stress. And when we were working with Apollo, it was fairly hilarious, because I was like, Patrick, this is like the third horse we'd worked with, and I was like, okay, well, I know him the best, and I've been with him the longest, so I'll just start him, and you can just coach me. It was like,
and that was so perfect. I'm so glad that we did that.
And I was like, Patrick, it's not working. I can't do it. And there was so much like grace in him. And then I was like braced up against him, like, okay, who's going to win this stubborn brace, and I'm just going to isometrically resist this. But then I was going to be like waiting there the whole entire day. And it was amazing when you said a simple question of, it's not that I want the horse to go here. It was, how far can you move today? And that for me completely changed when we talk about energy and intention. I didn't realize I was actually asking so loud, and Apollo was clearly responding to that. And that was a really huge moment for me to be like, every answer they do give is the right one, because it just is what it is. And it's not up to me to judge that or change that or demand it be different. That horse is just doing the best he can do at the moment with his body that he has that day. And so when we talked about that, and you were like, how much can you flex or lower your neck or soften yourself today? That like changed the whole entire feeling for me of like, I need you to do this with your body, and then I was like, wow, that was like way too intense and demanding my intention on the horse. And that was just
and yet you weren't doing very much.
Right. I was actually like, just kind of I wasn't like, banging on him or anything, or, disengaging the hind legs. And, it was just like, we just have a standoff about this brace. And then of course, cause I'm bracing, he's bracing, so I'm bracing, and then it's just like the bracing circle continues. And the minute you had me soften the idea of my question, he responded, right away. And so that was a really big, powerful moment for me.
Do you want to learn how to communicate in a way that your horse can better understand? Check out Team Tate Academy, JJ's online classical dressage academy. Open for enrollment multiple times per year. As a member, you'll gain clarity through the USDF-accredited lesson library, monthly Zoom meetings, and twice-monthly live study groups called the Tack Room Chats. Join the community and benefit from connecting with a fun, passionate, and like-minded group of dressage lovers just like you. Be supported and empowered to make the progress you and your horse deserve, regardless of age, level, or background. Be inspired by JJ's commitment to your success as it shines through in every lesson and lecture. Let JJ's belief in you and your horse transfer over to every one of your rides. Visit teamtateacademy.com/podcast today to join the waitlist for the next enrollment period.
Mm-hmm.
So when you started talking about that, I had to jump in.
I love. I could see you smirking a little bit there. I knew where you were going in your mind.
Yes, I was like, yes, that was a big aha moment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that a few years ago, I would have said, when I apply an aid, it should mean this, and the horse might give me the wrong answer. Right? Whether it's on the ground, whether it's under saddle, and it was my job to educate the horse of what that answer was supposed to be.
Right. Yes.
And so I got a lot of wrong answers, and I helped horses find right answers, but I got a lot of wrong answers initially.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere, I don't know how it happened or when it happened or what inspired it, but somewhere along the way, I started changing my question to when I would apply an aid. It wasn't I want you to do this. It was what does this mean to you in this moment?
Right.
And so instead of a command, it was a question. And when you ask that question, what does this mean to you in this moment? The answer is right 100% of the time. There is no wrong answer to that question.
And don't you feel like after you change that approach, the horse then gives you at least double what he would have given you had you demanded it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it comes from a place of emotional self-carriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. So the emotional self-carriage, I think, comes down to the willingness or the confidence as a learner, right? Or the willingness or confidence to actually do what we've asked them to do. Our job is not to carry them when we're riding. Their job is to carry us. They're the ones wearing the saddle, right? And yet we see riders all the time kind of pushing and nagging and begging and pushing and nagging and begging and asking and, and continuing on. And that's the horse not committed to the job. Right?
Yeah, and just waiting for it to be over.
Exactly. Just waiting for it to be over or waiting for the next push command. Right. And I heard somebody say, and I wish I could remember who it was, but they said something like, I'm just pushing the buttons. They're doing the thing. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it too. It's just, I make the request, the horse does the thing. It's like if I were to ask you, hey, JJ, can you, bring me a glass of water? I can allow you to bring me that glass of water because you were willing and you're nice and we're friends, and that's not a hard thing to ask for. Or I could go up there and grab your hand and place it around the cup and walk you every step of the way.
Make me do it.
Make you do it, and you might be perfectly willing within that. But in none of those places have I allowed you the physical or the emotional self-carriage to actually do that. Let's say you did want to do that for me. You filled up the glass with water and you start carrying it to me, and then you get distracted by something. Your phone rings or you're scrolling through Facebook or there's a knock on the door, right? Well, now we've lost the emotional self-carriage for that. You've become distracted by something else, right? So then what do I do in that moment? Do I honor that, okay, the phone rang. Maybe it's, somebody important is calling. You have a client calling, whatever. Maybe, Charles is at the door or, there's things in life, right? And it's that way with our horses too, and I find this when we're doing the in-hand work. Well, maybe there is something that startled him over there, and that's valid. But now we've got to get back to work, right? Yeah, okay. You got the phone call. You need to answer your client's question, but then you do come back, and you were bringing me that glass of water. So there's kind of that emotional responsibility in there that I think is really important that we give to the horse, so that again we're not dragging them from point A to point B, or we're not being drugged by them from point A to point B.
And that partnership is really, at the end of the day, for me, why I have loved dressage since I began that, that was what drew me, to dressage, is that exactly what you're talking about. And so how do you, there's a lot of, like, I'll just say it, like bad dressage out there. There's a lot of force and there's a lot of, lacking all kinds of self-carriage. And so how do you like inspire and motivate people to see a new way? Or which is really not a new way. It's actually the old classical way, which,
It's
I
just a
feel
good way, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like as Charles, has always proven, like it just always works. Like the questions you ask the horses, like just like you're saying, like the horse always has the right answer, whatever that might be, because we're just letting the horse feel like a participant in it. And so how do you like inspire people to, see that way of communicating and riding?
Oh gosh. I think it's something you can't unsee.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that it's there, you don't know that it's there. Like there was a time I didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
There was a time I didn't know any of what I know now. And that's where we joke that I wouldn't let the me from 15 years ago ride my horse today. The me from 15 years ago, well, what would that be? Yeah, the me from 15 years ago had still started a few hundred horses under saddle, had still ridden with a lot of really cool people already,
Right.
but he didn't have a clue as to what I have now, and what I have now is going to be nothing, hopefully, compared to what I have in another 15 years. I think it just comes down to that. You can't unsee these things. And if there's times when maybe we don't understand it. I had somebody tell me years ago, it was a client, when we were having a fairly similar conversation 15 years ago, right? So at that level, she said, there's three kinds of people in the world. There's the kinds that get it.
Yeah.
There's the kinds that are working hard to get it. And there's the kind that are just incapable of getting it. And now I've taken that farther. Those kinds that are incapable of getting it, it's either presently or permanently.
Interesting.
And that's okay. None of them are wrong, right?
Yeah.
This stuff is great for you and I because we're like type A to the nth degree.
That's right. Let's figure it out. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
and how?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I think, in other occupations, people medicate for the type of addictions that we have, right?
Yeah.
But and that's where, this isn't for everybody. Dressage isn't for everybody. This type of connection with a horse isn't for everybody. And that's okay. And maybe someday they will be ready for that. And maybe they won't. And we can hope that they will, but we can't go, from barn to barn knocking on the stall door. Do you have a moment to talk about the word of our horse? So we have to be careful with that, and that's something, when we talk about how do you help people see this, I've gotten really uncomfortable with trying to get someone to see this. Like I think about little things like trailer loading. At one point I had a pretty good career just teaching horses to load in their trailer. Yeah. And it's still, to me, it's like the creme de la creme of your horsemanship, of your foundation. If that's got a problem, there's problems elsewhere too. Yeah. But when you see somebody struggling to load a horse on the trailer, I can't just go up and offer, hey, do you want help? Right? I don't know who they are. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're working through. And maybe I do. But if they're not asking for help, they're not ready for help. I might want to. I might see it and have to turn away because I struggle so hard not to offer that. But I can't offer it if they're not willing. So I get that. I've had several people on several occasions come up to me and say, so and so's really struggling with their horse. Why don't you just go out there and help them? I say, well, you can tell them that I'm willing to help, but I'm not going to just go impose myself. Yeah. And that's, of course, the trailer loading is just one small example of that. That's the case in so many things. So many things that we do with our horses. This way of thinking and feeling and being with them, you can't unsee it. And you're either ready or you're not. And that's okay.
Yeah. You just make us all feel okay. You're okay. I'm okay. The horse is okay.
I mean, we're all good.
Well, and like we're all where we're at.
That's it.
And like I know for me, I get really jazzed up about, because I love my horses so much, and classical dressage like speaks to my soul. And so I want to share it with as many people as possible.
Yes.
But yeah, you're totally right that, you when you're ready, you'll see it. And when you're ready, you'll hear it. Because I mean, we've all been through like, yeah, I remember someone told me that 15, 20 years ago, but like now I really get that, what they meant by that.
Absolutely. I think that so many times of things that, Ray would have said, or that I've heard Charles say, or Mark said, or, any of these great people that we all have the opportunity to ride with. This happens so often. I'll be riding along, or I'll be working with a horse. I say, that's what Ray meant when he said whatever.
Blah, blah, blah.
And then 5 years from now, I'll say, no, dummy, this is what he meant when he said.
Exactly.
It's like as you learn more, it all gets, it soaks in at different levels.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just want to kind of take a little step back here, because I think it was really great the way that you said that about, Charles saying it always works. And it does. When you present it this way, it always works. And that's very similar to something that Ray Hunt used to say all the time, is he would say, you're adjusting to fit the horse, and you're adjusting to fit that situation. He says, and I've never met a horse that didn't work for him, because if it wasn't working for him, I'd just adjust to him anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great to hear the parallels. I loved that so much, and that was something that Ray used to say all the time, was that in his time and his place where he was a cowboy, right?
Right, exactly.
But if he wasn't, he had a lot of interest in dressage. If he wouldn't have been a cowboy, he had a lot of interest in dressage, and that was something that when we had time where the weather was awful and we weren't really riding, or somebody didn't feel very well, we'd go up into the house and we'd watch videos with Ray, and he had video sets from Walter Zettel and from all these different guys. It was so neat to sit there and watch that with Ray, and have him pause something partway in and say, you see that happen? Watch, this is what's going to happen next. And it was just so great to see that, to really learn to read the horses and riders that way.
Yeah, and I've always felt that there is like really done, and I suppose this is for all horse sports, like really done well, there is a deep connection between all of it. But the level of even the liberty work, that, all these wonderful, quote unquote cowboys can do. It's like, that's dressage. You're just not in the saddle.
That's exactly
and so I've been waiting to have this conversation. And you just happen to be the guy, because I'm like, we have to draw a parallel between these two worlds, because everyone thinks it's so separate. And yet it is completely related, and
it's completely related. Absolutely.
Will only help your horse sort of adjust to what you're asking, whatever that might be. And like, everybody wants a horse that willingly follows you onto the trailer. But I feel like, because I ride classically in the saddle, my horses walk on the trailer, and then, so it's like, there is this like interesting parallel. And I love how you've explained it, and your words you're using about, really helping the horse become an engaged learner, and that it starts on such a spiritual level, and a personal level, that it isn't like us as riders and trainers, infringing our ideas onto that horse. It's like, we're sort of like, hey, what do you think about that? And, people a lot of times say to me like, wow, your horses really work hard for you. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't force them to do it, and it's like, I always make a joke that I'm like, so, hey, what do you think about counter canter? And they're like,
absolutely.
But then, working with you on the ground, I was like, whoa, I am still like way too demanding, and like,
it's just a whole other level. Yeah.
Right. And it's like that whole next piece of like, can you truly do it through intention and breath? And can you talk a little bit about the horse's energy field? I loved that conversation we had as well. And I'd love for you to just, making people, and we always say this, like, if you are walking down the trail and you think in your mind that horse is going to spook at that mailbox, lo and behold, he spooks at the mailbox, because you put that, and we joke about, don't put that energy out there. But horses, like, tell me about, your thoughts on that, because that was really fun to have a conversation about that.
Oh gosh, I feel like I have a lot of thoughts on that at a lot of different levels. But but we'll try to make it palatable for everybody listening, right? Um, and I feel like I've got so many stories that can go with that too. It's all about a big part of it, and I'm going to relate it back to something that Ray had said. But he would say, and it's very much like what you're talking about with your horses. He would say, you want your idea to become their idea,
Yeah,
but you need to understand what their original idea was first,
I like that.
right? And I think that's really huge. We have lots of ideas that we try to push onto our horses without understanding what their idea was first. And I think
Hmm.
that's why we end up having to, not having to, but that's why we end up seeing more pushing and more pulling and more,
Yeah,
more work than what it needs to be, really,
right,
as a
right.
rider. Can we get their idea to become, or can we get our idea to become their idea? They have to be, again, willing to follow that line of thought, that line of thinking. And one of the things that I've been really adamant about lately with my students is helping them to understand that, we talk about body language with our horses.
Hmm. Hmm.
And body language is a huge component of the communication that we have with our horses, whether we're on the ground or in the saddle, whether we're catching them in the pasture or whether we're working with them in the stall. Body language is huge. But even bigger than body language is energy and intention.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And there's actually this philosophy, I believe the word is emergence.
Hmm.
It's this phenomenon, rather, not philosophy, it's a phenomenon. This emergence, when you watch a school of fish flow at the same time, right? When you watch a group of horses going side by side and the legs all time up with each other,
Hmm.
right? When you watch that herd of horses running in the field and they turn and they move and they do those things, that's what's referred to as emergence, where there's this kind of unified mind, right? This
Right. This
unified
collective
intention.
energy.
Exactly, this
Yeah.
collective energy. And um, I was actually watching this really cool video clip the other day that has nothing to do with horses, but it has everything to do with horses. You know those? They're so fun. And it was this collection of metronomes, that you might have above the
Yep.
piano when you're playing the piano. They
Yep.
had probably like 40 metronomes, and they clicked them all to go on at different times. And it was like a mess of metronomes going everywhere. And within about 3 minutes, they were all in
No
perfect
way.
unity. It
No
was really
way.
fascinating stuff. And it was all about the energy of coherence will overpower incoherence if given enough time.
Wow.
And so here we are talking about little pieces of plastic and metal,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
synchronizing energetically, right? And that doesn't have a brain to think, right? So this idea of emergence and coherence like this with our horse from the ground is where I try to get this process started. And then it just makes
Hmm.
so much more sense naturally on the saddle.
Yeah.
Like we talked
Yeah.
about, can you guide them through your seat before you're ever sitting on them? Can you do that from the ground? So
Right.
your
Right.
core, your intention, your energy. But one of the things that humans really lack in our understanding and practice capacity is energy and intention,
Yeah.
right? I think the closest we come to emergence is driving through the city, having stoplights and stop signs, right? Like that's, I think, the closest that we get to a synchronized movement as a group of people. Um, and horses know that.
Yeah.
Right? You're cleaning the stall or you're grooming your horse and you're talking on your phone or you're thinking about this or you're giving orders to Sid and you got stuff there's
Yeah.
there's things going on all the time, right? That we're focused in so many different places, right?
Yeah.
It's like the difference between mindfulness and having a mind full of mess, right?
Right.
Horses seem to, as a species, know that the human is rather underdeveloped in our
Yeah.
understanding of energy and
Right.
intention, right? And so they tend to tune it out.
Interesting.
Except when we look at like say Mustangs, right, that are
Yeah.
being gentle to begin with. They're keenly aware of the energy and the intention because their survival depends on it, right? But we'll say
Hmm.
the average horse that most of our listeners probably have, that were born in a box stall or born in a pasture and they've been around people their whole life and whatever, they learn to tune us out because they know that we're not very coherent. right?
Yeah.
What we say and what we mean don't always jive. And
Right.
so to me, there's a huge responsibility for bringing our energy and our intention to our horses.
Right.
And then for making sure that we maintain that, right? Because it's a tall task in order to do that. So in order to help our horse to realize that we have that coherence. And sometimes, like when we were playing with the intentional lunging, I was
Yeah.
talking about kind of adjusting the volume, right? To help the
Yes.
horse, feel my energy at a 1 change to a 2.
Right.
And if it doesn't change, then I might have to turn it up to a 10 just so the horse realizes that I made a change. And then I come right back down to that 2, just to help them start to say, hey, this guy's got, some awareness of energy, some awareness of intention. And again, I don't want to sound too hippy dippy woo woo on it, because it's just a basic thing. You see horses in the paddock do it all the time.
Right. I mean,
they
one
don't have
horse
to-
looks at them and they're like,
Exactly.
woo, okay.
Exactly.
And so how do you coach your riders? Like, let's talk about fear for just a little bit about, they look sort of calm on the outside because
Mhm.
they're, attempting to hide the fact that there is actually a nervousness or a fear inside them. And the horse like completely reacts to that. Like, how do you coach your riders? Like, how can they work through that, actually calming their energy, and being honest with themselves and working with that like buzzing energy that's kind of happening inside, even though they look a little calm on the
Mhm.
outside.
Um,
And we
red
read
wine.
it
Red wine
because
is my favorite way of doing that.
I was gonna say, because we see it, because we see how the horse is reacting. And even though they're like, I'm not nervous, and I'm like, you are actually.
Yeah.
So okay, red wine.
Yes.
That's great.
Red wine. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the easiest way. That's the easiest way to do it. No, that's not a great way to do it, actually. That's really hard, and there can
Yeah.
be some lessons that end up, kind of with an extra copay on there for your health insurance because they're billable more as mental health sessions.
Yeah.
But that's something where, again, the coherence from the riders and helping them to be more honest with what they feel. That, I think, I know I've heard you talk about that, that riders just saying what they feel, and really owning
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important, because there's times when they're just not ready for something. The horse might be ready, but the
Yeah.
student, when we're in a lesson teaching, the student is the conduit through which we work with the
Right.
horse, right?
Right.
And if that conduit isn't ready, then we've hit the brick wall, right? We can't go any farther than that. Now, there are some times when you know a student well enough where you can kind of say, hey, pull your head out of your butt there and let's do this, just focus, just let me, trust me in this for a moment, and maybe they
Yeah.
can work their way through that. But I think that's a very rare thing. I don't think there's a lot of times when we can do that. I think those are
Right.
moments where we have to back off and reevaluate and say, hey, where are you coming from here? What's going on? What are you feeling? What's getting in the way?
Yeah.
Kind of Dr. Phil it a little bit. How's that working for you? That sort of thing. Because really, in the end, we can't push them beyond that. You push
Right.
beyond something like that, that's dangerous.
It-
Because
that
you may or
dangerous
may
was
not
the
be
exact
prepared.
word that came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, they may or may not be prepared to handle what comes on the other side of that.
Right.
And if we push them through and now they can't handle what we've pushed them into,
Yeah. We've
that's
created a
super
reason
dangerous.
for them to be afraid.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And we've caused a lot more potential trauma, even
Exactly.
than what we were dealing with to begin with. So honestly, I have a lot of clients that I have several clients that are therapists that coach
Mhm.
riders specifically.
Yeah.
And so I make lots of referrals for that,
Yeah.
because I think it's really important. It's interesting. I never used to understand fear from a rider.
Mhm.
When I was younger,
Yep. Me
bouncing
too.
on all those young horses
Yep.
and whatever. And I've had both of my legs broken now in horse accidents that were,
Mhm.
one was a slip and fall, one was an accidental kick over a spook and something. Like it was no malice or anything like that, at any point.
Right.
But the second broken leg that I had. It was a pretty bad fracture separation of my ankle, and I was kind of headed in two directions at once, so they had to do a
Mm-hmm.
surgery to fix my foot. And I still had young horses in the barn. And my daughter was just, fairly young, just born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe she was a year old. I don't even think that old yet. So I had a family to take care of, and I had a barn full of horses. I had young
Yep.
horses to start. I had things going on, right? So I'm out there gimping around and starting young horses. I've got this deal where every horse learns to pick you up off the mounting block. I had to climb on a mounting block with my crutches and climb up onto a 55-gallon drum. And I taught all these young horses to pick me up from the 55-gallon drum so that I could still start colts as I was doing this, right? Because I would like to say I've gotten much better at teaching people since then. So now if that ever happens, I can at least sit in a chair and talk to people. But at the time, I had to work these horses, right?
Right.
And I broke the screws that they put in my leg.
Oh, boy.
And I actually did it. I got my foot stuck in the mud, turning a horse out into the paddock, and I felt it break. But I went back in for another surgery to get that fixed. And the long and the short of it, I had a few days off. I think I had 2 days off, actually. Supposed to be a couple of weeks, but I had 2 days off. But when I climbed back on after the second surgery, the fear that I hadn't even acknowledged had left.
Yeah.
It had left. I was very lucky.
Interesting.
But when I got back, I don't know if it was a protectiveness or what it was that I didn't allow myself to acknowledge because I couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because I had a family to take care of. I had clients to please. I had horses to work. I had whatever. But when the fear was gone, I felt that there was a void where it was.
Interesting.
Right?
Yep.
And so then I think back like, man, those horses that I rode in that time, I must have done a pretty bad job in that time, or did I? And turns out they all turned out fine. But I'm thinking I wasn't all of me for them in those moments because I was fearful, and I was fearful in a way where I didn't even allow myself to acknowledge it.
Right.
So I think a huge part of dealing with fear, dealing with the feelings of inadequacies, the feelings of not being ready to move on or to whatever. Well, we just have to own those, we have to acknowledge those. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of be aware of it and then say it out loud, and that there's no shame in that. And the more you air it out, the less power it has.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's a huge club. I find so many riders are afraid to admit they're afraid because they're afraid they're going to be judged for being afraid. And then it's like this big collective wave. As soon as one rider says, I'm kind of scared, everybody else is like, oh my God, yeah, me too. But it takes that one person brave enough to stand up and talk about being afraid before anybody else feels confident in even admitting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thinking about that, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self? Things that you've learned. What kind of inspiring words would you give?
Pay closer attention. I think that's what I would tell my 16-year-old self. Pay closer attention. I think about that in all of the things that I do now. Like I've become obsessive with the internal structures of the horse and, from the mental side and the physical side. And I think sometimes, man, if I was more interested in this in chemistry class or biology class, just pay more attention. Even when you think you're paying enough attention, pay more attention, dig deeper, ask more questions. And maybe that might even be the second piece of information. First is pay more attention, and the second is ask more questions. Even if you think you know the answer, ask the question.
I love it.
Because you might be surprised.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I don't want to take the whole entire evening. I know we could keep talking.
I think we could,
hours. We're just going to have to do this again.
That's it.
But tell everybody where they can find you and follow you and keep up to date with all the things you have going on.
That's awesome. Well, and first, thank you again so much, JJ, for having me on here to chat with you. This has been so much fun. And I do think we could probably chat for many, many hours without end. But yeah, so if folks are interested in finding out more about me, I'm on lots of the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Patrick King Horsemanship is what you'll look up. My website, pkhorsemanship.com. And then I have my online in-hand program at developing balance in hand. It's balanceinhand.com.
Super. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to do this again and hopefully to see you soon.
Yes, perfect. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, JJ. So great again.
Thank you, Patrick.
That was so much fun.
That was so fun. Oh my God.
I just looked at the clock. I'm like, oops. I mean, I suppose I'm in charge of this and I should shut this down for tonight. But I'm like, we could just keep going. I mean, that was totally. So fun. That was fun.
That was so fun. Thank you, JJ. I won't lie. I've got as many of these podcasts and interviews as I've done. I get nervous when I'm on this side of it. Like ridiculously nervous. Like I go through this checklist, like, okay, make sure you pee before you start the call because you don't want to have a full bladder when you're doing this. Make sure and I've got like 6 bottles of water here and a full thing of tea. I'm like, I just got to obsessively prepare.
Well, and I was laughing because I'm like, this is kind of fun to turn the camera around on you because usually you're the interviewer. And I'm like, all right, now I got you in the hot seat. This will be great.
Exactly. Well, and I really appreciate it. And I love the fact that, we can chat so much like you and I can anyway.
Yeah.
Because I won't lie, I turned down several podcast interview requests because I'm like, no, I'm not good at being in that seat. I can't do that. I can't talk like that. So this has been so much fun. I feel like this has really let me kind of unwind and unlock, and you've done a great deal for alleviating my fear of being on this side of the camera. So I really appreciate
I would have no idea that you would even have that because I'm like, Patrick, I mean, first off, Patrick and I can talk forever, but I'm like, Patrick's so funny and he does this for a living and he's on YouTube and podcasts all over the place. So I'm you make it very easy. So I would have never guessed.
I used to be so terrible. Like I was the kid, even up through junior year of high school, I would pass out if I had to answer a question in class.
That's crazy.
This is
what we're going to talk about next time. Because you would never guess that.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. That's okay. So you give that some thought because we're going to have like part 1, part 2.
There we go.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's it. Volume 1 to volume 2, right?
Exactly. Here,
Volume 1, issue 16.
Get your hours. Exactly. Here, listen to hours of JJ and Patrick shooting the shit.
That's it. It's going to be a whole nother show.
I love it. That's a whole different show. Exactly.
Well, that was so much fun. Thank you again so much. That was great.
Thank you.
All right. And
Thank
I
you,
hope to see you
JJ.
soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Dressage Life with JJ Tate. Make sure to tell your friends that they can find us wherever they get their podcasts, and be sure to subscribe, like, and leave feedback to help other dressage lovers inspire their ride too. For more information and education from JJ Tate, make sure to visit teamtateacademy.com. The content you just enjoyed is produced and powered by Red Mare Enterprises, creating possibilities through branding, modern digital solutions, and project management. We know the horse industry inside and out.